Oh, well, Robert Farber's joining us.
Me, Bobby?
You're the only one who's allowed to call him that.
That's right.
Okay. So, hello, and welcome to another of my series of conversations. My name is John Cornicello, and I'm going live on Mondays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Coming up next Thursday, August 20th, my guest will be Corinne Alclavecchios for part 2 of Fine Art Portraiture. We had a really great time during her part 1, so I'm looking forward to that one. But today, I'm still letting people in here.
I can let people in while you're talking. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Today, my guest is photographer Michelle Bates, the author of the Plastic Camera book. Michelle and I are also the photographers of the world's largest comedy, variety, and vaudeville festival, the Moisture Festival, that held here in Seattle. We're going to talk about both today. So let me introduce to you my friend and co-conspirator, Michelle Bates.
Hi.
Hello.
This is so fun. John Cornicello and I have been, in the same circles for many, many years and photographing Moisture Festival for over 15 years. Part of the Fremont community and Seattle and lots of other fun stuff and photography. So this is great to say hello to some of his community and be able to, talk to people who are interested in photography. I have kind of a couple of different worlds, which I sort of represented here, my fine art, Holga toy camera work. And then down below in the back, we have some of my performance photography. I put together a little short slideshow with some images, and then we can chit chat and answer questions. And
Great. Yeah, so
all right.
Let's see if the keynote runs.
All right, we tried this several times to get it to be right. Let's see.
And while we're watching this, if people have questions, you can use the chat box or you can unmute and ask your questions direct. This is a conversation among all of us.
All right, so you're all seeing Michelle Bates with the book, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, this isn't going to be too long. I do love showing my pictures and talking about stuff, but I made a brief one for today because I'd love to hear from y'all. This is, in 1991, I first discovered the Holga camera, which maybe you can kind of see. I'll show it to you after. But and this was the first image that I took that I thought was kind of cool. And it didn't quite look right in a normal negative carrier back. This is 1991 film days. So I started making my own because I thought the image had more going on. And I ended up with this piece of cardboard to put my negatives in the enlarger in the darkroom. And I came up with this. And this is still the same piece of cardboard I use today. Real high tech. And I still do darkroom work. I had a show in March, which nobody saw. But I went into the darkroom and made new prints for it. And this was another really early image that I took that ended up being a CD cover. I'm leaning more towards the performance stuff today, but kind of mixing it up. I did a bunch of years of photographing for the Seattle Weekly and the Stranger and Eastside Week, weekly newspapers in Seattle.
Hang on a second, Michelle. Someone have a radio on in the background or something? If people can mute themselves, that'd be great.
My wife.
Mute.
Here, I'll just mute Michael.
Just mute him for now.
Yeah,
okay.
There we go.
There we go.
Mueller's always a troublemaker.
Anyway, so this is a couple of pictures that I had in the paper, which is just kind of fun. This right now, this picture is where the Gates Foundation headquarters is now. This is a picture from the Solstice Parade in Fremont, which is part of my community with John that we've both photographed for many, many years, although neither of us are quite as sprite as we used to be running around the parade for hours and hours. This is a Holga with color film, which is something you can do. And I made darkroom prints from the film, color film. And here's a few pictures of me photographing the parade, which may or may not have been taken by John or my friend Matt,
I don't remember.
Matt Friedman. Matt Friedman or John have taken pictures of me in the parades, but I always like to be part of the parade. And in that center one, there's naked painted bicyclists behind me, which is just how we roll around here.
Yes, that's one of the highlights of the parade for some people. We've had up to 1,200 naked painted bicyclists crash the parade.
Yeah. And this is from the Oregon Country Fair, another one of my favorite events, which also didn't happen this year. But color Holga film and darker prints. And this is from a series of photos I did of decaying parade floats in a field in Israel. This is my book. The first edition is the yellow, second edition is the blue. I'm not going to show other people's work today, which I usually do in my presentations about toy camera work, but it's got 50 other photographers' work doing toy camera work, a history of the genre, how to, and if anybody's interested in toy camera stuff. It's kind of cool, but mostly today I'm kind of talking about performance stuff, but you can talk to me about whatever you want. This was like the image that started it all off for me in a lot of ways, because my friend invited me to photograph an event for her organization, and these buffoons were there, and I fell completely and totally head over heels for them and said, how can I make myself indispensable? And this was in 1994, and I still photograph these people today, Umo Ensemble. So completely life-changing moment, and I'm so in love with the buffoons. This is a piece that they did with this giant puppet, and the mouth moved, and they would go around and talk with the hands and the eyes and the nose. So kind of a mix of performance stuff with the film. This is all still in the days of film, but with regular cameras and Holga. And then this was another big moment. So one of those buffoons asked me to photograph him for a piece he was doing, and I really didn't know what I was doing at all, but I had my little film camera and a flash, and this is the piano in the house I lived in, and me just shooting away trying to figure out what to do, and we ended up with this picture. And so on the left is kind of what it came out of the film as, and then a little darkroom magic back in the day to make it look kind of creepy. And he ran with it, and we're going to come back around to this later, but this is still one of my favorite images. And then soon after that, I did more photos of Umo. And then in the early days, it was all kind of black and white. I didn't really have the capability of dealing with color. Another one of the Umos, Martha. And another one of their shows. So I've photographed almost all their shows over the years when I've been in town. This is another artist who's been involved with Umo over the years and also does his own work. This is kind of was a ridiculous shoot, but a lot of fun. Also film, juggling various cameras, Holga. So on the left is how a picture comes out of the Holga, just like that. And then using my cardboard negative carrier on the right shows how I make them look a little more like my own images. And then this is kind of how that one looked. And his poor instruments got flooded with salt water, and it wasn't really good for them, but it was really fun, and we got great pictures out of it.
Yeah, Ila's got some really great sculptures.
Yeah, Ila is one of the most talented people I know. He's really, really incredible. More promo photos. Larry Pisoni, who's a pretty well-known clown from the Pickle Family Circus, did a piece with his son. Come on. In the very early days of circus contraption, which ended up being hugely influential on the circus scene in Seattle and I think around the country. Again, kind of early days, black and white film. And this is also Umo up on the Space Needle. Terrifying. I've worked a lot with puppetry, puppeteers, puppet shows over the years. I love puppets. This was a particularly beautiful and creepy one, Frankinocchio by Brian Kuzer. And another Umo show with light. I love I love artwork. I didn't even put anything about this in there, but I also photograph artwork for artists. You know, from your very basic paintings to sculptures to pieces with light in them. And I like artwork and things that integrate light into what I'm
And you
trying to
teach a
photograph.
class on how to photograph artwork, correct?
I do.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, you know, I teach workshops in, this is from the same show. I teach workshops in toy camera work. And, you know, there's a certain slice of humanity that's interested in that, but there's a much larger slice of artists who need their artwork photographed. So I decided to branch out a little, and Artist Trust had me create a workshop to teach artists how to photograph artwork. So that's not represented here, but it's something else I do. And here's another piece that integrates light into the photos, which is pretty cool. Another ridiculously talented, the guy in the front with the guitar is one of the founders of UMO. So there's an UMO thread through a lot of what I do, that group. But he painted this too. Stephen Moody, who is also this face. This is an installation, or I mean, performance piece that took over the Seattle Central Library when it was new, which is this kind of really amazing building with all sorts of floors and layers and places and colors. And so there was this piece kind of all day long where you had instructions to go here and there and whatever. So this is my friend Mick up on this catwalk way up on the top, and there's the red papers are being thrown down and floating through the big atrium, and people are looking from all the different, anyway, it's just a very cool use of a space. This is my old living room in Seattle. This is Bob Venezia, another performer and photographer and friend of ours, helping me set up in this little black space here to photograph something very difficult that I photograph on stage a lot, but having control over the environment allows me to do pictures like this. So this is Tom Noddy, and he does bubble magic, and it's very difficult to photograph. John and I have a million pictures of him up on stage, but he can only do the very simple bubbles, but the simpler bubbles when he's on stage, and it's very hard to control the environment. But using this kind of setup where I have lights shooting up from below, and I have that little crack in the back to have some light coming down from above, and the background is black, I had a lot more control over the environment to make this. Bubbles. Are you doing bubbles, John?
I was.
Is that smoke in the bubble?
Yes.
Yes, he does smoke in the bubbles so that you can see them. He used to use cigarette smoke, and then he got something rigged up that's not cigarette smoke because he quit, but it helps you see them.
Yeah, you can go look up Tom Noddy on YouTube and find him on the Johnny Carson show.
Right.
Okay. Like decades and decades ago. He's been around forever.
Yeah.
A few more UMO from one of my favorite shows of theirs, El Dorado with the Buffoons. This was the Flaming Idiots who perform at Moisture Fest, and I did a setup shot of them kind of breaking through this background. I had, in my other slides, I have an animation of them climbing all the way through, but this ended up being used in New York. There's a little me standing next to the billboard of this picture in New York at the New Victory Theater. And that's where it was in New York on 42nd Street, which was super duper thrilling and exciting. And there's a whole bunch more pictures along the bottom of that. Anyway, I grew up in New Jersey, and I spent my whole life going in and out of the city through Port Authority, which is on this street. So having these pictures there was like—
Where in New Jersey?
Oh, East Brunswick, exit 9. This is Kevin Joyce reprised the show, A Pale and Lovely Place, that we had first done pictures of in 1996. And he did the show again in 2011. And we were just chatting with some people at the opening, and I was like, God, it's just amazing how I caught the character so well when I did that photo. And he said that photo that I had done at the very beginning actually informed who the character was. And all the way through to different iterations of the show, including this one in 2011. So that was like huge for me, realizing that the work that I'm doing is not just documenting what the artists are doing, but it's a collaboration. And here's some really fun pictures with Alex Zerby. Sorry, I forgot to put his name on this one. Who is another one of our Moisture Festival and fun performer photographs. Anyway, he's on a little trampoline there, and we did a zillion shots of him throwing these things out. And as you can see, most of them didn't work out that well, but the one in the lower right did. And I ended up doing a bunch of Photoshop on it to make it look like this, to get rid of all the background stuff. And here is Leela Vision. Again, this is Ela, the guy who had the instrument in the water, which you can see in the middle there, that recovered from the salt water, doing a big old show at the Moore Theater in Seattle. So we all kind of grew up and evolved together. Here's a little example. So Stefan, who's my partner, is on here. And this is his band Skitnik, which is sadly no longer around. But this was a shoot where we did a bunch of kind of normal shots and like you do. And then at the end, we're like, let's do a weird one. And we did this. And this is the one that they ended up using. So, you know, always like throw in the weird shots. This is another one of our friends, performer Henrik Bota, and he's wearing a neon suit and he's actually juggling here. So this was a really fun one to do, of testing with the amount of time and drag and getting the movement in there. At some point in here, we've moved over to digital, which makes life easier. And this was a really early shot at Moisture Fest of Duo Madrona, who used to be called Curly Burly.
Curly Burly, yes.
Yeah, at the time they were, and they've gone on to be performing all over the world and stuff. But this is kind of a classic, just a handful of shots here of Moisture Festival in our warehouse in Fremont in Seattle. You know, just our friends, the weirdos. He's making a sandwich with his feet and she ate it.
And Rob was one of the flaming idiots from that New York photo.
Oh, that's right, right. There's all the connections. He's one of the flaming idiots, but he does the sandwich with his feet. He's got meat and mayonnaise and pickles and lettuce down there.
Bologna, yep.
Bologna. Nanda, some of our favorite little performers.
Yeah, we've watched them grow up.
Acrobaticalists. Right, we've literally seen them grow up. They started out doing this as teenagers. A couple more of my favorite Moisture Fest shots. Michael Carbonara on the right has gone on to have a TV show doing his magic, but we got him to Moisture Fest once.
And that's all shaving cream.
That is shaving cream. He like transforms himself into different characters, which is like kind of phenomenal. If anybody saw Mummenschans back a long time ago when I was a kid, it's like that. They used to do the same kind of thing with clay, and then I saw him do it with shaving cream and totally blew my mind. Just from the burlesque shows at Moisture Fest, just an insane, just crazy people. And at some point over the years, you know, Moisture Fest, I don't think I was always digital. We started in 2004 or 5.
2004 was the first shows, but we didn't photograph it.
Yeah, and so 2005, John and I started photographing, and I like borrowed somebody's early digital camera, so the early ones aren't that great, and I kind of upgraded over the years, even though I'm all about, like, it's not the equipment, because I do Holga toy camera stuff, which is as cheap and simple as you can get. For Moisture Festival and the performance photography, the gear actually does make a difference. So I have upgraded my gear over the years. I've always been Nikon SLRs to better and better ones that have higher sensitivity, higher speeds, faster focus, and stuff like this. And then last year, I got a Fuji X-T3. I went mirrorless. And here is an example of a shoot that I did last fall, or in December actually, that it really came in handy because, I mean, first of all, it's smaller and it's lighter, and that's just easier on my hands. But it's quieter. And as performance photographers, this is super important for me and John and other performance photographers who actually bother to pay attention to this, which a lot of them don't. people who use full frame digital DSLRs, you can hear them across the room, and it drives me nuts. So that's one of the things I really like about the mirrorless. And this was a shoot that I did in this little space, which is not that much bigger than you see here. And I photographed from the back there, right behind people. And I was so glad that I had the mirrorless, but I also realized that not only is just its regular mode much quieter than the SLR, but it has an electronic shutter, which is basically silent. So I shot this whole show from right behind these people, and they had no idea. Nobody heard a thing. And I got a lot of really beautiful shots for these dancers. So I was super happy to have that gear there. And just in general, it's smaller and lighter and everything. And just the last couple, this is from this past New Year's Eve. Martha Ensign and Kevin Joyce, originally from UMO, have a production company called Enjoy. They do a lot of corporate events, and I photograph a fair number of those. So this was a piece for New Year's Eve, and they had this set, and they painted Brittany Walsh, who's been in Moisture Fest, she's a contortionist, to match the set. And she did these amazing pieces where you could kind of hardly even see her, and it was super cool.
Yeah. And Brittany's also in the Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh, right. She has a piece where she balances on her hands, leans over backwards with a bow and arrow in her feet, and shoots a target from upside down. And she's in the wax museum. There's a wax model of her doing that. It's amazing. And one last shot. This is from a few weeks ago. This is the nose. Do y'all recognize the nose from one of the earliest shots? So on Vashon Island, where I sometimes am, I'm involved in the emergency services there, helping out, putting out situation reports and newsletters, but also photographing the stuff that's happening on the island around COVID life and support. So they pulled out the nose, refurbished it a little bit, made a giant swab, and we're out on the street advertising that there's testing happening on the island. And so, you know, they kind of paraded a giant nose up and down the street. And of course I had to be there for that. So, and these are some of the same people from that very first buffoon shot back in the day. And that's just a little slice of pictures that I have for you.
Yeah, and I guess some people don't know the other part of your life is being a scientist.
Right. Yes. I am a scientist. I'm a medical writer. I am a lot of different things. So, you know, that's fun to bring it all together. I used to be an emergency medical technician with the fire department on Vashon. I've been on arts boards. I do a lot. I like help. A thread that goes through a lot of it is helping artists get their work out in the world. So I've done that by photographing performances, photographing artwork, teaching artists how to photograph their artwork, running several galleries, being on arts organization boards, lots of different things like that. So I like doing artwork. I like hanging out with artists. I like helping artists. I like, you know, things like art openings.
Yeah. What year did you move to Seattle?
1992.
Okay, and I came in, I think, 93. We abandoned New Jersey.
Jersey. Bye. I still go there a lot, but now I can't go there for a while, so we'll see.
What is the Moisture Festival?
I knew someone would ask.
Yeah, I know, right? Good question. It is a festival. So there's this whole line. I don't know if you've heard of the Flying Karamazov Brothers, are a group of jugglers that have been around for many decades who are on Broadway. So some people have heard of them. It's kind of the new vaudeville scene from the 80s, 90s. And those people have been a thread through a lot of my life and John's life. They started an organization called the New Old Time Chautauqua, which tours there's Oregon Country Fair, which is a big festival that happens in near Eugene, Oregon every summer. And there's a vaudeville scene performance.
The background of the country fair, though, is Ken Kesey and the Pranksters.
Right. I mean, there's all these crazy threads. And so a lot of these performers would perform at the country fair, and then they decided to take the show on the road, and they created a group called New Old Time Chautauqua that does tours in the summer performing in small towns. And I've been involved in that. And then some of the same people, including Tim First, who's one of the original Karamazovs, they wanted to have a festival in one place. So they started this thing in Seattle called the Moisture Festival. And for 4 weeks, every March and April, it brings in performers from literally all over the world and does 50 or so shows, variety shows with live band, and has things, jugglers and aerialists and, all sorts of crazy types of performers.
But why do they call it the Moisture Festival?
Seattle.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
Moisture, and it's a really weird and slightly disturbing name, and Ron Bailey, who's one of the organizers, likes that. So I don't know. It came on and it just sort of stuck.
He sometimes says it comes because he was out on the coast at an oyster festival, and oyster became moisture. And another thing is, when I was working, I had a photo studio in New York back in the 80s, and one of my best friends there, Marion Goldman, was dating Paul McGee of the Flying Karamazov Brothers. So I've known of the Karamazov Brothers since the late 70s, early 80s, and all of a sudden I'm on the West Coast in Seattle and photographing them and becoming good friends with all of them. And it's like everything just keeps tying together in all sorts of ways.
Oh yeah. Well, they did shows on Halloween at my college my freshman year in 1987. And I went to see it, this late night Halloween show, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so cool. And then I ended up being housemates with Tim for years and years and years.
Yeah, it's funny how it all goes around. So you're
Right.
doing
So
your own
that's not
dark.
a great explanation, but look up Moisture Festival and you'll see more.
Yeah, moisturefestival.org. So you're doing your own processing. You're doing the film processing too, or do you send that out?
It depends on how lazy I am. No, I can do film processing here at my studio. I've never done color film processing.
Yeah.
So that I always sent out.
I know your Holga's 35 millimeter or 2 1/4.
They are medium format. So here
Okay.
is the Holga, a couple of Holgas. This one's gold, so you can see it better. And they take 120 film, which is medium format,
Okay.
and make those square images. So I process the film, and then I do the darkroom printing myself at various. I have darkroom equipment, which is sometimes set up, and sometimes I use rental places.
Yeah, and folks, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute, or any comments. We want to hear from you.
What makes you get up in the morning and decide to take a plastic camera out with you, and how does that affect your enthusiasm for shooting or your creativity?
It started everything for me. I mean, it didn't start it. I had an interest in photography a little bit when I was young, a little bit in college. I learned how to do darkroom work. And right after I graduated college, I went to the Maine Photographic Workshops, which is now the Maine Media Workshops in Rockport, Maine. And it was just one of the things that they gave you to use during the classes there. And the roller coaster photo over here is that one that I showed at the beginning was just something that I stumbled on when I was there. And, everything about it is fun and goofy. I mean, I make goofy pictures too, but there's this fun to it. I love photographing, taking road trips when I'm out and about, but I'm always very aware that as an artist, I'm not the kind of generative artist of people that I know that I have to wake up in the morning and make art. For me, it's a more social thing. So doing talks and teaching and introducing other people to the joys of plastic cameras is something that's kept me going over the years. So when I go out there and I'm selling myself to get a show, I'm also saying, let me do a talk, let me do a workshop, and then other people get something out of that. So I like that people enjoy the pictures. I like doing them, but I don't work in a vacuum. It's a social thing for me.
There's a comment in the chat from Daniel saying he's dabbled with Holga lenses on his digital camera and pinholes. Do you use pinhole lenses, and is there a particular reason you prefer the Holga?
The Holga is the kind of thing that I stumbled on, and when I was 21, and I've just been using ever since. So it's like my style. So there's a comfort in that. I've tried lots of other things. I have a whole room full of cameras over here, which I wish I could show you. And so I've tried lots of different ones. I have actually tried the Holga lens on the digital, and there's kind of the size of the image that the Holga throws out the back of the lens is big, like it's 2 1/4 inches square, the images that we make on film. So in order to get the same effect, you would have to have a big medium format or larger size sensor, and not that many people I know have those because those cost like $50,000. So I haven't really had success myself in making images that I like or that match my style with the digital, but it's a great thing if you can make it work. You know, any combination. I love that there can be so many combinations of analog and digital now. You know, you can take Holga pictures and you can scan the negatives and you can enlarge them, and then you can make contact sheets with 150-year-old film process, you know, analog processes and things like that. So that's really fun that you can do that kind of thing now.
Hey, Michelle, how's the performance scene looking these days in general?
Well, did you see the picture of the nose on the street? I took that a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
There is, John, do you have the Boing Boing link? Can you put it in the chat?
What link is
Okay.
that?
The Boing Boing article. So on Vashon, like, a friend of mine, Mick, who was in some of those pictures, did a piece with a giant red coat. It's 9 feet high, 5 feet wide coat previously. So she had this piece, and you know, Joe, you know Mick, and she pulled it out during COVID and placed herself near the ferry on Vashon with their little heads sticking out the top with a mask on and signs saying, "Please mask up, no hospital on Vashon." And it really was like super amazing to see art, anything. And it was big, so you didn't have to be close, and it was quick. It wasn't a performance, it was a thing. So you could go by, and it was so heartening, and it was so clear, like, okay, big things, that's what we need right now. So Stefan and I created a mask for my van that's really cute, and we did it in a parade on Vashon. And then they had the nose. And so these 3 big pieces, okay, so John put it in the chat if you want to grab that link and look at it afterwards. Oh, there you go. Oh, thanks. There's my van with the mask. And if you scroll down, you'll see the picture of Mick with the coat. And this is a whole article about, there you go, about me and about Mick and the performance community on the island, the emergency community on the island. So for now, it feels like big things are what we need. Now, Open Space for Arts and Community on Vashon has put together a series of outdoor shows that are going to be like that, where you can see them outside. But Jay Inslee, the governor, put the kibosh on all live performance for a little while. So we'll see. Hopefully that'll be able to start soon. And then, you know, I was talking to Janet a couple of months ago, and I was like, you are some of the most creative people in the world. And if there's ways that we can share performance right now, we are the people to come up with it and make it happen. And they have a big indoor space, but they also have property outside, and they have now a drive-in. They painted the side of their building to do a drive-in movie theater. And as soon as we're allowed to do outdoor performance, they will do it. And hopefully other people will too. And the reason I'm so thrilled about this Boing Boing article is to share with people that there are ways that you can get art out in the world right now. And it can be with a message or not, but right now, big things are what we need to do to share, because we can't do small things right now. So hopefully, you know,
Hey,
the weather is,
Sorry.
yeah.
I got interested in photography in the early 2000s because digital was finally getting affordable and stuff. But then I don't say I peaked, but then I started using increasingly low res cameras. Went from, D3, all up to D800, the Nikon. Then I started buying, my first Holga, then the first Instax, and now I'm doing primarily pinhole on film. I see that you mix that up too. I still have a good Sony mirrorless digital camera, but trying to decide, which cameras to bring. Do I want to bring the Holga? Do I bring a pinhole? Do I bring the Sony? We're going out to a shoot. I mean, you could do everything with the digital and make it look like a Holga shot or a pinhole shot. But I'm just wondering how you decide when you're going out to do a shoot or an assignment, out of this array of things that give you lots of different creative choices. How do you choose?
Well, the worst is when you go traveling for a long time and you have to decide what cameras to bring. That is just so painful, so hard. you know, there are some things I've settled on. Like, I don't use my fancy digital cameras for anything that I consider like fine artsy. I use them for the performance stuff. It's just not really interesting to me to shoot them for fine art work. And if I found the right project, maybe I would. If you look on my website, there's a photo series of a house that had a fire. And that was my friend Mick, who keeps coming up. Her house had a big fire on Vashon. And at the time, Holga's didn't have a bulb setting like now they do. They've gotten fancy. So I did those photos with a film camera, a regular film camera at the time. And so if something came up where I needed to use digital for that, but you know, I have this format of the Holga and I like it and it's my thing. And as an artist, I'm a little bit lazy. I'm not like the kind of person who's always generating new ideas. And, you know, that's cool because I know a lot of really cool generative artists who are always coming up with new ideas. But for me, I work kind of within this format. And I do present the performance stuff as artwork sometimes. So these pieces were made for a show at west of Lenin and then other places. And so they were hung on the wall. But that's, for those, I'm doing them mainly as documentation. I'm trying to get really high quality. So I'm using the high techie equipment. But then, you know, I have so many other cameras and sometimes I want to do cool things. I don't think I have it here, but there's a panoramic pinhole Holga, which is the other Holga that I use on a regular basis. And so that's the pinhole camera actually that I do use regularly. And I like that format, but I haven't done anything with those pictures, but I do like them. And then I have like this little camera that I kind of love, which is a digital replica of a Rolleiflex. And it makes these really crappy little digital files that I kind of love. So I don't know, it's sort of a struggle, but basically,
I have a question.
I think it's like keep it simple. When you go out to shoot, the more cameras you have, the more distracted you get. So
Can you hold up that Rolly again?
yeah.
So that's a digital?
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, it's teeny tiny, right? You can see.
But what size sensor is that?
The pictures are 1,532 pixels square or something like that. They're really small, but it's really sweet.
Like a 1 megapixel.
They don't make these anymore. It's been
They're about a 2 megapixel. I remember they did some extrapolation to make it like
okay.
3 megapixel equivalent at some point. But.
Okay, let me segue into another couple of questions,
Yeah.
if I'm allowed. So, have you ever tried using a DSLR, digital camera? I don't care if it's mirrorless or with a mirror, and try to do the images that you're showing in your other process.
Like try and make them look like Holga pictures?
Yeah.
One can do that, and I have not really tried to because it just isn't really of interest to me. The Holga, there's this element of surprise when you go out and shoot with it. It does things. The lens is a little piece of plastic junk, and you flare and you get double things and you get a weird kind of bowing and vignetting, and I like what it does. And
But
honestly,
you can do that with a digital camera.
I miss the shot. It's true. It's true.
You know, do it with Photoshop and a lot of digital cameras.
Okay, well, here is your answer to this. This is sort of the how do you want to spend your time and what do you want to be doing with your hands and your creativity, and it's what tool, right? So you can paint on the computer now, right? You can make things that look like paintings, but a painter is going to want to be there with a brush and canvas. And so especially now, like that we're just on the computer so much and that I have to spend so much time on the computer with the performance stuff and the digital stuff, I have no interest. I don't like using the computer as a creative tool. So for me, I like shooting with a simple camera where I don't have to futz with it or look at it afterwards or figure out the settings. And I like being in the darkroom. And sometimes I lose images because of that, but it's just what I like doing with my time and my creative outlet. I don't want to spend more time on the computer. Some people use the computer as a creative artistic tool. That's just not what I like to do.
The only reason I'm trying to get this bent in my head is that the computer is in fact the dark room, only it's not dark. So I don't understand what the difference is between what you're saying is the tool of the dark room versus the tool of the digital age.
I think Fred is putting something in the chat. Fred was saying the difference is intentionality. You're intentionally doing it in Photoshop, where you're controlling it, where the Holga is kind of random at times, so you don't have that control, and it's you get.
Right. Yeah. There's kind of the lack of control, but also, so the experience of being in the darkroom is you are in a room with an enlarger and you're physically looking at the piece of paper and you've got trays and you've got chemicals and you stand there in the dark and maybe you can listen to the radio, but mostly that's what you're doing is you're working in the darkroom and the chemicals are pulling up the image and you're going from the developer to the stop out to the fix and you're watching it. And like, that's where you are and that's what you're doing, which is just a different visceral experience than sitting in front of a computer. And there is something, I think people don't pay enough attention to what it is you're doing. Yes, you can do everything on the computer. I get sick of being on the computer. I don't want to be on the computer. I like working in the darkroom and I like the element of surprise that you get shooting with the Holga because I don't want to have to manipulate the photos to make them look like that. It's just a different experience.
Aren't you manipulating the photos? Aren't you manipulating the photos when you go into the developer and the shortstop and the fixer, and then you use sodium ferrocyanide to lighten things up or something else?
No, I'm not saying that I don't manipulate them. No, I'm not at all saying that I don't manipulate them in the darkroom. I'm just saying that I would rather be doing that in the darkroom physically where I am and what tools I'm working with than doing it on the, and I'm not saying I don't even ever do it on the computer. Sometimes when I don't have access to a darkroom, I will scan a Holga negative. I will put my little frame around it because I've scanned it. I will manipulate it to make it look good from the Holga negative, but I've never taken a digital image and made it look like a Holga image because that's just not of interest to me. But I don't know how to explain it. I mean, you've been around long enough that you've been in the darkroom before there were computers, and it's just a different experience than doing stuff on a computer. And painting with a paintbrush on canvas is different than painting on a computer. So I think that's worth respecting what we like to do with our time and what mental state we get in doing different things. So being in the darkroom, I'm not distracted by email and all the things pinging and all the other things there, and I like that.
Yeah, Mark Milrod is asking if there's a suggestion for a body to start with.
A camera body?
I suppose, yeah, I imagine so.
Whose body? What kind of body are you looking for? That's, just a massive question. You can go from anything from a Holga to a point and shoot to an SLR to a mirrorless.
I mean, are there different model Holgas?
Are we talking about Holgas?
Yeah, let's say.
There are yes and no. There's just your basic Holga is the 120N. And they still make them. They stopped for a while, but now they're making them again. And that's your basic Holga. It's got a hot shoe. You can put a flash on top. There are a few Holgas that are this size and format that have some bells and whistles, but they don't really change what it does. And then there's the long, I just grabbed one other one that I have right here. This is a panoramic Holga with a lens. And then there's the pinhole one, which is just this part. It's just flat and has a pinhole here, which I kind of like because it's small. But mostly the 120N is your basic Holga. And there's a few different ways you can shoot with it, formats and stuff.
I see Kate in
And
there.
if you want to
Kate,
shoot film, if you want to shoot film these days, it's actually really easy to process film at home without a darkroom. You can do it in a bathroom, and you can just scan your film and work with it that way. Or you can mail out film to get developed. So even if you don't have access to a full darkroom, you can still work with film.
And
Kate,
I was
does-
going to mention, Michelle, that you can now actually get a coloring develop it kit that you can do at home. I've actually used it. It's fairly inexpensive. It's just a little pain to like use again because you got to warm it up. But it is.
So Kate, does
feasible.
Glazers carry Holga cameras?
Yeah, we have the 120N, but you can't get a pink one like this anymore.
Oh, and the gold one, I know you can't get the gold one. I thought
you
I
can't
lost
get
it, and I
those
was so
anymore.
sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Freestyle has this new like film processing tank, and it's super easy. You put the film in, and you pour the chemistry in, and you process it, and you pull it out, and it's really easy.
Yeah. I
Oh,
mean,
what do
there's
you
a lot
have
of
there?
options
Oh,
out
you have
there.
the glow in the dark Holga there.
Well, I was going to actually share too. I thought you would get a kick out of this, Michelle, and a couple of my friends who are on this. I actually have a Polaroid back that takes the peel apart film. This was like one of my first Holgas that doesn't have an advanced style anymore. But I just realized there's like a whole pack of film in here. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So to my
I
friends
have-
that were on, we'll have to
I
use it
have.
the
They
next time we
did.
go
They
out.
did at least like 3 different versions of Polaroid
Yeah.
backs for the Holga, which I have, and one of them took this early series of 80 series film that was square, and they
I have
had
some of that
a
film in my
square
freezer.
peel apart film. Me too. I have some still, and I don't know what to do with it.
I remember back
Great.
in New York when Marty Forscher used to build those backs for the Canons and Nikons.
Uh huh.
That's right.
Yep.
Professional
Hey,
camera
this one
repair.
still has film in it. Oh my
I
god.
still have
This
it.
one's
That's what I'm saying. There's a whole pack of 3000V. Like this is the black and white. So I
This
have to
is
wait
black
until
and
it's
white. I
less
don't know.
funny.
It's
Anyhow,
crazy.
I just thought it was
No.
funny.
Yeah, no, they in the back in the day they made a whole bunch of different styles of Holga, and then they stopped making all of them, and now they just make like the basic ones. So, but you can
Yeah.
probably get the old ones. They might be in various states of disrepair because again they're like very, very cheap and simple.
So Ian, what camera's on your shirt?
Oh, that's a Fujifilm camera. Sure.
Ah.
Yeah, Fujifilm.
I have one of those
Hey,
in
hey,
red.
Mich-
Yeah, Joe.
Michelle, I was just going to echo your comments about with the theater work, the mirrorless cameras really do open up a lot of,
Oh my
things that were
god.
difficult to do before. Anytime there's a live audience for sure. And even when there's not, just being able to shoot discreetly or even silently sometimes, it's just so freeing. So I was really appreciating your comments on that, and also just the social aspect of the performance work. The performance photography is a lot of fun as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so Joe and I photographed this event called 1448, which is the world's quickest theater festival where they create 14 shows in 48 hours. And everything, this addresses the question of why would you work in the darkroom and why would you work with a Holga? It's putting artificial constrictions on your creativity and seeing what happens. So what they do is they do a cycle of 24 hours where 7 writers, 7 directors, a bunch of actors, they come together, they come up with a theme, they pick the theme at random. Writers are told at random how many performers they have. They go and write a 10-minute script overnight. In the morning, they pick their cast at random and they spend the day rehearsing a show and then performing it. And it's just completely artificial limitations on it. And it brings the community together. All these people in the Seattle and other places now, it's spread community, get to spend the weekend together learning and stuff. And the art that gets created is all over the map. Some of it's terrible, some of it is absolutely brilliant. And so I started photographing it, and to be within those strictures, I shot film at the beginning because it was early days. And I went while they were teching and I processed the film in the darkroom, and I made contact sheets and I made prints, and I added another limitation with myself, which is I only printed them full frame, and I put the line around them just to be in that limit and trying to make good art within these limits. And then I put the pictures up on the wall during the shows and people could see them. So, And over the years, I photographed it a bunch of years, and then other people came in, and then everyone started shooting digital, and the difficulty of it and the restrictions, like doing full frame, all sort of fell by the wayside. But it was something that by just, giving yourself limitations to see what you can do within that. But yes, and the quiet cameras make a huge difference, and I've been driven insane for many, many years by photographers with loud cameras shooting in my ear at shows. And so everyone who shoots performance photography should get the quietest camera possible and be respectful of audiences. Be respectful of audiences. They are more important than you are.
Agreed.
Claps from Fred.
Yeah.
Other questions out there?
Hank says, film is a collaboration with chance. You arrive at images you wouldn't have intentionally created.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that sounds like lame to some people, that, well, if you're an artist, you should be able to do what you want to do. But, some of us like that. And that's, the artistic process is really different for everybody.
What do you do with these images? Are they for sale?
Yeah. I could, if I could carry my big screen into the other room, I'd show you my closet's full of framed photos, because I've had lots and lots of shows over the years. I have lots of frames and matted photos. I've had exhibitions around the country and some internationally. So I love it when people buy them and take them home. These performance photos, I wanted to show them. I didn't quite know how to do it, so we came up with this idea of putting gold rope around them. But these are on foam core. They're not super fancy. But all the Holga stuff is all darkroom work, including the color, and they're kind of done archivally, and I do like to sell them. I had a show up in Seattle in March, and I was all excited to kind of put it out there and sell work, and then nobody could come to it, so it was a little sad.
So I think it was back in 2009 at the Palm Springs Photo Festival that we had a presentation by Andy Summers, who was, with the group The Police. And he was a very prolific photographer. And he had mentioned that he had tried going digital, but what happened is he ended up not shooting as much and wasn't quite as inspired. When he went back to shooting a Leica, he felt entirely different and started shooting much more again. Would you say that's kind of like the feel of the Holga as well?
It's just different. I mean, in a way, I think most people shoot less with film because you're paying for each frame. And when you shoot, and so you're thinking, and for me, you're thinking and paying attention to each frame, because each frame is like a real thing and money, and you might not have more film in your pocket kind of thing, where it's digital is sort of infinite and free-ish. So I feel like I shoot more intentionally with film, and I have less to look at. Plus I'm looking at an analog, sometimes I scan them and I look on the computer, but ideally I make contact sheets and I'm looking at them on paper. And when I shoot digital, I shoot a ton, and I have hundreds of thousands of digital photos, and it's overwhelming. It's totally overwhelming. So it's super duper different. But yeah, it all really plays into what inspires you. What do you enjoy doing? What toy do you feel like? What tool do you like having in your hand? What do you like doing with it later? If you just like sitting in front of the computer and that can be your artistic outlet, then great. But if you want to be painting in a canvas, you want to be in a darkroom, you want to be drawing, whatever it is, it's just a different, it's a different outlet. I love being in the darkroom.
There's a completely different mindset.
There's something really different about film.
There's a completely different mindset when you're shooting analog versus digital.
Yeah.
However,
Definitely.
Have you ever shot 8x10 film?
Yes.
4x5. I've done 4x5.
Okay. So the reason why we slow down with the larger format cameras is because, 8x10 is an entire contact sheet. You have to fill those holders, 2 sheets to a holder. You have to schlep them around or whatever you have to do, unload them. and then you process one, and from that one you tell the layout to either push or pull, and so it's a completely different mindset. With 2.25, but especially 35, you're able to keep shooting and shooting and shooting, and no matter how much you shoot on the 35, it still only equals one whole sheet of 8 by 10. With digital is another mindset, which is how big is my card? How much will it hold? You know, 8 gigs, whatever, or 32 gigs, whatever, and you keep going. So it's not the tool that you're using, it's the mindset that you have for that tool. The bigger the tool, the more intense you are how to set things up. 8 by 10 still life versus 35 millimeter still life. It's not as intense.
Right. Well, the big difference also is when you shoot digital, you can see the results right away. And with film, you can't, right? So that's a huge difference in how intentional you have to be about setting things up, and that you have to know what you're doing because you can't check it afterwards.
Well, but then there was
so that
Polaroid.
affects
So you could see in an 8 by 10.
Right. Yeah, I know. I had
But 8
those.
by 10 Polaroid was pretty expensive too.
Right.
But
I have lots and lots of little Polaroids from my early days of shooting all the performance stuff, and I had a Polaroid back for my Mamiya 645, and I love these little Polaroids. Like, I should make a little collage of all of them of the setups. But
I find coming from film to digital that I still think film. I often come back and start going through my images and realize there's fewer there than I thought I shot.
Right, exactly right.
Yeah, Kate.
No, I was just going to say that I think that there's two sides of it. There's two kind of other thought processes as well. Is like, okay, many of us have shot film. A lot of us are still shooting film. And I know when I shoot digitally, because I primarily shoot digitally, I try and take that slower approach. If I'm doing work for a client, I want to make sure the lights are set, the composition is good, there's nothing growing out of their head or anything like that. So I'm still trying to slow down. Is it as slow as if I'm shooting medium format film? Probably not. But I also don't want to come home with like 1,000 images that I now have to go through, like Michelle was talking about, spending forever on a computer. But then I'm also seeing, all the 20-year-olds who grew up with one of these or some kind of digital camera in their life, and there's this resurgence in getting into film. Like if you go into Glazers, for instance, here in Seattle, there's hardly any used film cameras because the 20-year-olds are coming in and getting them and then buying tons of film, which is great because that's still making it available for those of us. Unfortunately, it's not available in some of those larger formats. But, what I'm really, I guess I'm trying to convey is that I think that a lot of us who shoot digitally are taking that slower, more methodical process. So you have less to work on, less time on your computer, more time creating the image.
Yeah, and sometimes I wish I did spend more time. Sometimes if I just, I have a digital point and shoot and I'm out in the world and I do, I just shoot snapshots and I don't pay attention. And then I kick myself later because they could be better.
But I think that's okay too. I think that's also part of just like capturing day-to-day life. Is I think it's okay that we have those snapshots. When you look back at photos of your family that you grew up with, like those are snapshots. They're not like professionally made portraits. You know what I mean? Anyhow, yeah.
So Hank is asking what your upcoming projects are.
I don't know. I have no plans for the rest of my life. Everything's up in the air. I do medical writing. I'm doing that part-time, and hopefully the dance outdoor performance stuff at Open Space will be happening, and I'll shoot that. Artistically, I spent a bunch of time during like the real lockdown catching up with filing my contact sheets and negatives from the last few years. So that was great. And I think I'll probably go back in the darkroom. But and then just getting ready for this, I did a show at West of Lenin Gallery in Seattle a few years ago on performance photography that I made these series for. And I did a slideshow, a whole talk about performance photography. And I looked through that and I was like, oh my God, there's just so much stuff. And so wondering kind of what can I do with all that work? I have a big collection of images of the history of performance and spectacle and celebration art in Seattle. And maybe I could do something with that, but I don't really know what that would be. Really, I should make a new website. That's what I should do.
Cool. Well, we're at the top of the hour.
John should do that too.
What's that?
John should do something with all his photos of that scene too. And I don't know what we can do.
I'm
I
concentrating
don't know.
on.
I'm looking for ideas. It's a different world right now, and I don't know how to share art. I'm all about bringing people together. Even when I do exhibitions, I like to do an opening, and I like to do a talk, and I like to do a closing because I like to gather people together physically. And so I don't know how to do that right now.
Stefan says it's time for a second Moisture Festival book.
Oh, do we have the book to show? We did a book. I know this would be a good time to be doing it. I don't know why we didn't.
Do you know how many images you have of the Moisture Festival?
Oh, I could just look at my my Lightroom catalog.
Yeah, I just pulled up my Lightroom. I have 103,755 photos over 16 years.
Oh, this is my other catalog that's not that, which is 122,000.
It's crazy. Yeah, right now my project has been these portraits of people wearing their COVID masks.
I know, that's really cool.
Yeah, putting the book together is a tough one because we've got a bunch of photographers involved. We got to pull images in, go through them, figure our favorites, what the performers might like, what the producers might like, and it's not the easiest job we've ever done putting together a book of images. We need just to find an editor to do it for us.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know where mine is. But yeah, we did a book of the first several years, 2004 to 2009 of Moisture Festival. And so it's been going, 2010 to 2019, and we really should do another book. But again, it's hours and days and weeks sitting in front of the computer. And my tolerance for that has gone down over the years. And even shooting shows that I get paid for, I groan when I have to sit in front of the computer and edit the photos, and it's really hard because it's part of the process. And I don't know what to do about it. I need an assistant or intern who can do that, at least part of that. There's winnowing down the photos, the two uses of the word edit, like editing down which photos you're going to use and editing the photos. It's a lot of work.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Michelle, for joining us today. This has been a lot of fun for me. Go back through a lot of memories. Hopefully other people enjoyed it too. Even though we have inside stories and the like, but hopefully we opened them up and let people in with it all.
Just thank you very much.
Lovely to see you all. Good. Thanks for coming.
Good to see you. Thanks
I
for
don't have
sharing,
anything
Michelle.
scheduled for next Monday. It'll just be an open discussion unless someone jumps in and wants to give a presentation. And then Corinne Alavecchios is going to be here on Thursday, the 20th. And then we see where we go from there. So thank you all for joining us. I'm going to stop the share on Facebook right now. Stop live stream. And
Can you
thank
save
you all. I'm going to stop.
for me to read?
Yeah, I'm going to stop the recording here.
Okay, thanks everybody.